lost souls, and welcome to Rough Start, where we here at Rough Magic Games teach you how to play a different tabletop role playing game every episode. That's right, we run through it so you don't have a rough start. My name is Charlotte, I use she, her pronouns, and I am a professional GM with Rough Magic Games, a collection of many more professional GMs for hire as well. If you're interested in playing a game with one of our GMs, be sure to check out roughmagicgames.com. If you already know who we are and love what we do, check out our Patreon. The link is in the doobly-doo below. I love exploring the wide world of pen and paper role-playing games, and tonight my guest is...
Oh, my name is Caito AC. My pronouns are they, she, and I am also a professional GM with Rough Magic Games, as well as a producer, GM, and player at Queen's Court Games.
Wow, so fancy.
Oh.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight, Caito. How are you doing? What's going on? Play any good games lately?
I'm fine, fine, fine. I had actually last night I had a really great D&D session with my regular standing game where we're playing Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and they are hilarious.
Ooh,
Oh
I love
boy, they
that.
made friends with a tiny animated mushroom who just wants to sing them songs, and it is really great. Um, yeah, I played that. I've been dabbling in the world of cult, which has been very fun. Um,
Ooh.
and I'm going to be a player on Vicen, which is really exciting. It's the same people who made this game.
Oh my goodness, and what game might that be, Caito?
Oh, it is in the US, Mörk Borg, but in Sweden, it is Mörk Borg.
Mörk Borg.
We'll probably call it
Yes.
Mörk Borg.
Yeah. I think Mörk Borg is kind of a happy middle, you
Yeah,
know,
happy middle.
for anyone who doesn't
Don't
speak Swedish.
Yeah, don't at me if you're Swedish. I'm Norwegian. I don't care.
And I'm American. Uh, yes, I'm super excited because tonight we are talking about Mörk Borg. Mörk Borg is a pitch black apocalyptic fantasy OSR RPG about miserable bastards doing their best slash worst in a bleak, dying world. That is according to their website. That's what the game is about. It was written by Pelle Nilsson and Johan Nohr. It's published by Free League, and it means dark castle in Swedish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent.
Tell me a little bit about your experience with Mörk Borg. Have you run a lot of it, played a bit of it? What's the sitch?
So I have run this before. I ran this with a company called Tabula Sono. Lovely folks. They have a great VTT. And I ran what is the kind of the like built-in beginner adventure called Rot Black Sludge. Um, and my like true neutral DM side was like actually a bit antagonized in this process because I wanted them all to live so badly, but like this game is not built for your characters to live. You have to walk into it
No.
knowing that your character will die, and that's why character creation is so quick in this game. I would say that aesthetics wise, I had mentioned that it's a very buzzy game because the art is just super, super cool. I know we're gonna see it on the slideshow. But aesthetically, it's a very interesting rule book. It's very small. This is the core rule book. Uh, my experience at first was kind of like I came into it with D&D brain, right? Like where I was like the rules, all of the rules, and it was like this is pretty rules light. So, um rules light, violence forward, lots of RP, lots of storytelling that can be done with this magical little violent yellow book.
Violet Yellow Book. Ooh, that's the name of my new band, Violet Yellow
Yeah.
Book.
Just gothy
Well,
theater kid
I'm
stuff. It's fine.
right. Oh, I'm so happy to have you here because I do not have any experience playing or running Merkborg. I have wanted to play it for a long time. I've admired the aesthetic from afar for forever. but it's just never happened for me. So hopefully that changes, because I dig it a lot, having read through the rule book. Um, so I'm excited to get into it tonight, and I think
Yeah.
we can dive into it.
Yeah, one of the things that I like really wanted to bring up at the start is that the guys who wrote this, they call it a death metal album for a reason because they pulled a lot of inspiration from various musicians. So like on the title page, like they thank the playtesters, the proofers, the editors, all of those, but they also have a list of really fun metal. If you're a metal fan like me, there's some really great stuff that you can listen to kind of put yourself in the mood. It's very drony, it's very black metal, it is very like that kind of Scandinavian vibe, and it like absolutely put me in the mood to play this game. So just as a heads up.
Hell yeah. I've got a folk metal playlist that my friend made for me on Spotify, and I listened to that before
Yes.
recording tonight. So,
If you haven't already, check out Blackwater Holy Light. They are great.
ooh,
Yeah.
music
They're like
recommendations here on Rough Start.
they're like borderline like psychedelic, but they're all female, like but it's also very drony and buzzy. It's great. You'd love
Ooh,
them.
fantastic. Yes. So, um, talking about metal music, and kind of that aspect of Mörk Borg, let's talk about the lore a little bit, kind of the world that the player characters find themselves in.
Yeah, this is a very I wouldn't even consider it a post-apocalyptic world because it's an entirely different world from what we know. It's not like particularly a fantasy realm. It's the opening page. I think it's worth probably reading it. This kind of beginning setting the scene says the wind from the west, from the sundered land, rot rides it, and the stench of blood. Cursed walker, will you travel there to the valley of the unfortunate undead? Our young ones are taken by the child thief Tergol, known for his vile crimes and alchemy of flesh. That's in the first page.
Hell
um
yeah.
yeah, so the distances shift, paths between places warp. So it is this very dark, jarring, violent, villainous world that is just full of death and decay. Perfect for the season.
Yeah, amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, my understanding of it is it's kind of, eh, yeah, not necessarily post-apocalyptic, more like pre-apocalyptic, where there are these prophecies that the world is going to end, and the person who is giving the prophecies, I think the entity's name is Verhu. The prophecies are always accurate, so the world is going to end,
Yes.
and maybe soon, depending on certain factors.
Yes. So i- Verhu is definitely the prophet of this land. There's a whole bit of lore like on page 5 of the book that talks about the basilisk Verhu. It is the two-headed basilisks that are here to prophesize, and one of them is she. They call it, at first they called her she, the first of the basilisks. Um, and she bears the head of denial, Lucy, which looks up and down, yet all shall be well, with her twin Arc, the head of deception. So these two-headed basilisks are kind of like a big source of lore in this background, on all of it.
Yeah, something I really like about the lore as I was reading through it, it's very open to interpretation and like very much available for you as the person running the game to kind of bend it to your will and make it suit whatever you want to do. It's a little vague, but in a good way.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's intentionally so, right? Like it's
Yeah.
built so that you as the players and as the game master can focus. I think it is way more of an RP heavy, while there is myriad violence in it, but I think there is a really robust opportunity for some role play stuff that comes with this game. That it's definitely a little bit more in the world of a theater of the mind game than a a
Hmm.
visual representation. You can certainly, but there are no real mechanics for it. So yeah, leaning into the story definitely is what they're aiming at, or it feels like it that way.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the Valley of the Unfortunate Undead in the
Yes.
reading.
Hmm.
When I was looking through it, I got the impression that that is oftentimes where the characters might find themselves, like kind of as like
Yes.
the main impetus for whatever adventure they're going on.
Yes, that is exactly where they would be finding themselves. I mean, you can there's a small kind of reference map earlier on page 8 of the book, if you're following along at home, where there are these various areas of the land of the Valley of the Unfortunate Undead is right next to. I'm gonna get this so wrong because again, I'm not Swedish. Wasteland and Schleswig and the Endless Sea and right near Bergen Crypt and there's just the various areas that folks could find themselves in at the beginning of this. So there are kind of like two major city-ish areas and then this Valley of the Unfortunate Undead that very much is a place where characters could find themselves.
Awesome. Yeah, I love the sound of that so much. Yeah, I think now that we've got kind of a grasp on the basics of what's going on in the world of Mörk Borg, let's talk about some mechanics. Get down into the nitty gritty of it.
Sure, yeah.
Um, yeah, so you mentioned Mörk Borg is very rules light,
Hmm.
very theater of the mind, which I think is interesting for. I feel like when people think about OSR games, which to the anyone not in the know in the audience stands for old school revival or old school renaissance. I feel like people don't associate rules light and theater of the mind with OSR, but it still very much feels like an OSR type of game
Right, right,
as well.
absolutely. Um, so the way that you create is it okay to jump in?
Yeah, yeah, please.
Excellent. So also because this book is very buzzy and very art focused, which is beautiful and lovely, sometimes you can go, wait, but how do I start character creations? Because there's no header that says character creation. So you do have to do a little bit of digging. I definitely recommend reading through the book a couple times before you launch into running it, which is very easy to do because again, it's
Yeah.
only this
The
big.
nice thing is it's a short book. You can get
Yes.
through it, especially if they have very kindly released a plain text version of it because
Yes.
the actual version of the book is really beautiful. It's got some wild graphic design in it. We've got an example of some tables and some charts that are early on, which it looks beautiful, but it is not always very easy to read. So they do have a plain text version without any images as well available, which is what I have so that I could read the rules and not feel
Yes.
confused, even though it's very
Yes.
beautiful.
Um, and if I'm remembering correctly, the Merkborg website offers these things for free.
I believe that is the case, or like, suggested donation, or, pay
Yeah.
what you can type of situation.
They are all about it being financially accessible for people, which is I think is a really cool thing. There are also, if you check out the website, there are myriad other sort of class options that are additional extensions that people have written. They really love when the community collaborates on their game. So when you start on page 18, if you're in the book, in this world, there are those who seek riches or redemption. Some say the apocalypse is inescapable and that it might even be stopped. And there you walk in discord and despair. One hand holds 2d6 times 10 silver, and the other holds a water skin, d4 days worth of food. Your soul and your silver are your own and equally easy to lose. To begin with, you are what you own. And that is where we get to the first chart on page 19, where it should indicate it at the top. It says D6, D12, and D12. This is how you begin your character creation, which is kind of wild because you're beginning with equipment. Um,
I love that though.
Yes, I mean, like, realistically, you kind of jump right in with this, and I am realizing per our guide that I jumped down and will go back up to abilities and
That
things
is
like that.
okay.
Um,
We've given the audience a little sneak peek about what we'll talk about for character creation. Um,
behind the
but
veil.
yeah. So before we jump into character creation, so you mentioned
Yeah.
roll a d6, roll a d12.
Yep.
What sort of dice do you primarily roll in Mörk
You're going to be you're going to be using pretty much everything, but very often you are going to be using D6s, D4s, and D8s. But the nice thing is you just kind of can have everything at your fingertips. There are going to be certain tables that you need a D12 for, but for the most part, you're going to be rolling D4s and D6s, I would say.
Okay.
So
For the tables and stuff like that, and then for
for
the
the
actual like
tables,
roll in the game, that would, to my understanding, be a d20, just like good old D&D.
um, if I'm remembering correctly, I don't think it is. Maybe I'm wrong. Oh, um, looking at the violence page, instead of like in D&D where we have I'm making an attack roll and it's against an AC, it is players roll both their attacks and defenses. So you don't have kind of a set AC from the top. So yes, it is a D20. I'm sorry.
That's
I
totally
apologize.
okay. No, it's
Um yes.
let's
So against your DR, your difficulty rating, which is averaged out at 12, because very often when you roll your stats on the abilities page, um your stats are gonna you're likely gonna have a negative stat. You might even have multiple negative stat. You might have a stat that is 0. You are not a beefy boy at the top of this, and I don't think
just a
that you
regular
would
guy, you know?
just a regular old regular guy.
Yeah.
And you may not survive long enough to even see yourself advance. So I think it's also at the discretion of the GM who's running it to see, like, we do it with various other systems as well, to see where you wanted to set everybody's level, to see like how intense it can be. But you definitely get thrown into situations where like one hit could take you out.
Yeah.
So
We just talked about Call of Cthulhu,
yes.
and also a very meat grindery game. So don't get too attached to your characters in Mörk Borg, because you will have to
Yes.
say goodbye to them at a
You will
certain
have to
point.
say goodbye to them, and you might say goodbye to them rather quickly. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the difficulty rating is very similar to, a lot of D20 based type of game. Well, again, I love 6. So simple, people laugh at you for failing. I think that's a great kind of a
Yeah.
waypoint for that. Normal is 12, and then 18 should not be possible. So that's 18 is within the realm of possibility, but also very difficult. Um, like when you think about, and I mean that when you think about like other games, but like in Mörk Borg, 18 is very difficult to achieve. Like you said, you might have negative modifiers.
Right,
um
right. And 18 could be the equivalent of a 25 to 30 in a different system. So,
yeah. Yes. Now we'll talk about the aforementioned abilities, which may or may not be
yes.
negative.
Yeah, so your character possesses on your character sheet, you will have various abilities. It's these four that are listed here. So agility, which is defend, balance, swim, flee, presence, which is to perceive, aim, charm, wield powers. We'll get into powers as well, which is your magical abilities, which you may or may not have, just like as you would in any other system.
Ooh.
Ooh. Strength, your ability to crush, lift, strike, grapple, makes sense. And then toughness is your resistance to poison, cold, heat, surviving a fall, things like that. So those are your main core four that you're going to have when you start playing.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I think now we can jump into character creation, which you were so
Let's,
excited to do. So I'm going to let
I
you
know, I'm so
handle
excited.
it.
So we're kind of we're we're kind of having you create a character, is that right? Like this idea that you're gonna be rolling?
Oh man, we don't normally do that, but I could.
You can if you want
it's
to.
it's so simple. I've got my dice right next to me.
Let's
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 party.
give it
Let's
a
do it.
try. Yeah.
Yeah, let's give it a try.
So we'll start, I got very excited about it because the book is quote unquote out of order of what you would anticipate. Like you think like, oh, of course I'm going to pick like class and my abilities and like it starts with equipment. So you have to kind of dig around a little bit, but it's very fun. So on the abilities page, you're going to roll 3d6 for me.
Okay. Okay. I gotta get my 3d6. Ooh, the sound of dice rolling.
Yeah.
Okay. I've rolled 3d6.
What did you get?
I got a 6, a 4, and a 3.
Okay, so a 13. So you got a +1. So do that for me 3 more times so we can generate all 4 scores.
We got a +1. Ooh, bad rolls. 7.
7, okay. That's a -1.
Okay, +1, -1. 11.
That is going to be a +0.
All right. And then finally, 5.
5 is going to be a -2.
Okay. Not
So
not an awful
depending,
spread.
it's not the worst. It's not the worst. So when it comes to building your character in Mörk Borg, you don't have to take a class. You can play with just your base scores and your equipment brain. But you can find this very interesting series of classes that occur.
Hmm.
So yeah, this guide right here. So this is why I went in this order in terms of character creation. But so you can take a look at the various optional classes, which starts on page 46 of the book. There's things like the Fanged Deserter, the Gutterborn Scum, the Esoteric Hermit, the Wretched Royalty, things like this, which are just the Heretical Priest is one of my favorite ones. People tend to like that one a lot. The Occult Herb Master. They're
All
all
very
just
evocative.
very evocative. And there are more available on their website too, if there are like different classes you want to expand out into. There's a very cool, like, what I would equate to a bard character. It's like the songbird or something like that. And so you can choose a class from that. There are various things that you gain in addition to that if you were to choose a class, but you don't have to. If you want to do a quick, like, let's just jump right into it, this is how you would set it up. So we have your abilities, and then this is when you would start randomizing your equipment again on that page 19.
Hmm.
So for each of these tables on page 19, we've got the D6, the D12, and the D12. You would roll on each of those tables with the corresponding die. And that could be you get, if you roll a 1 to a 2, you get nothing. If you roll a 6, you might get a donkey. Not bad. Or one of the above of your choice. So equipment can include anything from a backpack to a small wagon to nothing. You can also, when you as you continue rolling, there's some stuff as simple as like a sharp needle or a bomb that gives you D10 damage. So it's not the way that we think of it of like, oh, I'm going to play a barbarian, therefore I know I have my martial melee weapon and I know I have this adventurer's pack or whatever. You are truly just like navigating this very bleak landscape with whatever you were given on this randomized table. It also is the same for weapons and armor. One
Love
of my
that.
favorite things, it's absolutely wild, right?
It
And
makes it
on
so
the
easy, you know?
it really does. It really, really does. And it's just
I
super
mean, there's
simple
5
weapons.
steps listed here, like it's
Yeah.
so easy.
It's so easy. So like, you roll a d4 on the armor table. You may have absolutely no armor. You might have heavy armor that gives you extra defenses against, when you do your defense rolls and things like that, obviously. Um there's also, various equipment pieces that you could buy on the equipment table. The weapons, I think, is really pretty fun because you could have anything from like um a human femur to like a warhammer. So, depending on what you're into.
I mean, that's the strongest bone in the body, so it would probably make a good weapon, right?
I'm pretty sure that in the campaign that I ran, two of my players had human femurs and that they found them. So, you
From the
know,
same guy, right? One from each
they might
leg.
have been mismatched, but I really hope they were the same guy. That guy is in rough shape. um, so once you have your weapon, your armor, obviously we went a little bit like in the order that makes sense in our brains, right? We like went with abilities first. Then you would roll your hit points, which is hilarious because it begins with your toughness stat. So in this case, Charlotte, where if you were, if you're creating this quick character, what is your toughness?
Ooh,
Uh,
I like playing people who are tough, so I'll put my +1 in toughness.
your plus one. So go ahead and roll me a d8.
All right. Oh, I got maximum 8.
Okay, so you have 9 hit points. That's
Woo!
how you're gonna start. When I had other characters play this, I had one who had 4 hit points.
Oh, small
And
little
it
baby
is
bird.
yes, correct. So it definitely gets a little bit terrifying. And then this last point, which I think is just really fun, of name your character if you wish, it will not save you.
No, it
Um,
certainly will not. But we all have
I
names.
we all have names, but and it's very funny when people name their characters, and I'm like, oh, you got attached to it. Now you're in trouble.
Yep. Well, they do
um,
very nicely have a table of random names as well. So
yes,
if you don't want to
this
get too
book is
attached, you can roll
full
randomly.
of tables.
I love rolling on tables, and this
I
game just like
really,
scratches that primordial need. It's great.
it's great. Um, so yeah, that's kind of your base. From there you can add in, like I was saying, about those various optional classes, things like that. Those are always things that you can add on. I also had a total thought about name stuff. There is because Mörk Borg likes to have people contribute to the zeitgeist that is Mörk Borg. There are a couple of game creators named A Couple of Drakes who are really, really awesome people. If you haven't followed them already, please do.
Ooh.
They just released their Kickstarter for Feyborg, where they are taking this world and adding the Fey to it, because we had a whole conversation about
Ooh.
how the Fey are actually really terrible, evil things.
Yeah.
Um, and the idea of like name your character, it's not going to save you. Like the Fey are coming. Maybe it's also part of that too. So
They'll
um,
take your name if you
they
give
will
it.
take your name. So if that gives you any other indication, also they have Pirate Borg, they have Cyborg. There are
Cyborg,
various
which is great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. So there are various iterations of this game that you can play based on these core rules and based on how you would create a character in this land.
Yeah, and I imagine, creatives out there can take this and do whatever they wish with it. If you want to write a
Yeah.
whole new setting for it, I'm sure something that is super doable.
Very common.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so on the note of I think it's really interesting that, the classes as we think of them are an optional rule.
Yeah.
Do you when you've run it, do you run with the classes, or do you just kind of let people choose, willy-nilly which one, if they want to have a class or not?
It's kind of like thinking about some other systems, like any kind of like powered by the apocalypse system or things like that, where there might be a class or an archetype that is like sort of just like an average Joe, or like a sleeper is what we call it in cult. That like that could be an optional class. So if there's someone who's like, I'm not really interested in taking a class, totally cool. I like it because I like to see whose personalities come out and how, based on the classes they choose, because the classes are so out there. And it gives you some additional abilities, which is always like, it's going to come in handy. You got to use everything you can in this system. um So, and it also, that is when you can kind of implement the things called omens, which you get a certain number of omens as your character, which is, it sounds ominous, haha, omen. But an omen is actually something that you can use to your advantage. Um, so omens can be that, like, you, for example, if you took the Fang Deserter, you get a D2 of omens or something like that. You roll it at the beginning. That's the number of omens that you get. And an omen could do anything in the world of dealing maximum damage with one attack, re-rolling a dice roll, yours or someone else's, lowering damage dealt to you by D6, neutralizing a crit or a fumble, or lower one test's DR by -4. So those are things that you can burn um, as part of having a class that you don't
Mhm.
typically get if you were doing the rapid character creation.
Nice. So it kind of makes your character a little bit more survivable in a way.
Correct. A little bit more of a, maybe a buff on there for you, or a debuff if you need it. So
Yeah. Love that. Something to twist the hand of fate a little bit, as it were.
just slightly in your favor, but it won't do you any good.
Yeah, not for very long at least.
Correct. But it does implement some really cool things. So yeah, and with those, with these various classes, some of them come with powers. So ones that are able to use scrolls or use powers to cast spells, or there are various options that you can get using powers that you can get through your class, or finding a scroll. But if you don't necessarily have the ability to navigate a power, it's going to be a lot harder for you to use it, and then there are ramifications when you do.
Yes.
um so yeah, powers, a few so-called powers are known, and they are usually found written in scrolls. So there are two types of scrolls. You've got unclean scrolls and sacred scrolls. We love both. We love both,
All
and guess
right.
what? You roll on another table. So when
Help,
you
love tables.
let's
I
say
think
you
we'll
are, oh, go ahead.
sorry, I just say I think we'll get into powers in a little bit.
Great.
Um but I again love rolling on tables. And I think the last thing my brain has on character creation in like a free association ADHD type of way is the classes remind me very much of the classes that are available in the game Heart as well,
Sure, yeah.
which is also a very funky, weird game. They've got a class that's like a magical beekeeper. They've got a class that's entirely like you rose from the dead and now you're alive again. So there's a bunch of weird stuff in there too, and that's what the classes in Mörk Borg reminded me of.
Yes,
Very
they
cool,
are
wacky, out there. Yeah,
just weird, and we love
yeah,
that.
love
So
that. Love that. So what I think we'll do now is we'll take a quick little commercial break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about violence and powers. All right, we'll catch you on the other side, folks.
remember where I was sitting.
All right. Snack has been snacked.
Proud of you.
Thank you. It's a delicious little yogurt bar.
Yum.
And now I'm going to reapply some lipstick.
Oh, yes. I knew you put powers in here, and then I was just like, what powers? Like I said, this book works like a sweet, sweet, anxious or ADHD brain.
It's just a spiral, you know. It's
It really
you can
is.
go anywhere from anywhere.
I bookmarked
Oops,
the
wrong
pages
bag.
so I can like talk them.
Yes, that's what a spiral is. Don't at me.
That's. I'm having one now. I'm having one now.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Putting my dice away. Yeah, definitely we are. We're talking about Naruto Uzumaki. Got
Nerds.
him.
Bonk.
Uh, you'll never take me alive.
Perfect.
Yep. Hey, yeah, it just look like I'm talking to myself. I know, but Molly's here, and we know that Molly's here, and it doesn't matter what anyone else says.
Are we recording?
This will all get cut out. It's the break. All right. I've been snacked. I've been watered. I've been re-lipsticked. I'm ready to hop back into it if you are.
Rock and roll. Let's do it.
Hell yeah. All right. Mm-hmm. Exactly. All right. I mean, I'll count down again even though we're already recording, but it just helps me get into the zone, you know? All right. 5, 4, 3. Welcome back to Rough Start. Tonight we are learning how to play Mörk Borg with my lovely guest, Caito. Before the break, we talked a little bit about the lore of the world of Mörk Borg. We talked about the rules light core mechanics. We talked about the abilities and character creation. And now we are going to talk about the thing so many RPG players love to do, and that is violence.
Much like my cat this week, we are choosing violence.
Yeah.
So,
Tell me a little bit about
let's.
violence.
Sure. Violence is one page long, which is fun.
Hell yeah.
So the way that initiative works in Morkborg is um we roll a d6, so that could be at the discretion of the GM. Realistically, the GM could never roll a die in this game if they decide not to.
Rock on. I love that shit.
You could have a player roll this. Yeah, me too. Um, you would roll a d6 on a 1 through 3. The enemy side goes first. On a 4 through 6, the PCs go first. Your agility is a plus a d6 is individual initiative or to determine who goes first within the group. Pretty standard, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then we can get violent. Like I was mentioning before when we were talking a little bit of in character creation is so players are rolling both for their attacks and defenses. So it is not against an armor class that exists already for the character. The creatures and the enemies that are being played by the GM they don't roll in combat. It's all player based, which is even more exciting because that means you have the power. And I put it in quotes because you're definitely going to die. Anyway.
Yeah,
So
I love the
go
idea
ahead.
of not having to roll as a game master.
Yeah.
Very much reminds me of Powered by the Apocalypse games as well. But I think it just flows so much better when you don't have to worry about rolling on your side of it. You just, have stuff that needs to happen and let the players, take care of it. It's great.
I love it being so player centric because then the GM also gets the opportunity to focus on the story.
For sure.
Um, so when it comes to making attacks or receiving harm, um, there are there are two ways to go about it. Pretty standard as well in the game systems that we've seen in the past. There's a melee one, which is you're testing your strength against a DR 12. So that's going to be your D20 plus your strength um, ability modifier. So, Charlotte, let's give it a try, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it. All right. We'll say I put a +0 in my strength. Gotta get my dice out again. I put them all away
I,
during the
I
break.
know. I'm just like left fielding you on this.
I love it though. I'm gonna do a little bit of dice ASMR real quick. Just
Thank you for
rolling
that.
around.
I needed
Yep.
that too. I needed my brain scratched.
All right. So I'm trying to beat a 12.
Trying to beat a 12.
I got a 14. I beat a
Hey,
12.
so with that, that would mean that you hit. Excellent. We love it. So then you would roll based on whatever weapon you have. I'm assuming it's a femur. Um
Yeah. Oh, femur
and
for sure.
so you would roll against, against their hit points, obviously, like we understand as well. Um, these numbers can change depending on what creature is there. So, like, the DR might be as high as 20, and I can guarantee you're going to run into creatures that have a DR of 20. It
Oof.
is a whole thing. You additionally can make ranged attacks, which is presence based. So your presence stat on your ability list of that 4. And then when it comes to rolling your defense, you're going to test agility against that D4. So go ahead, Charlotte. You just hit me in the face. Now I'm going to see if I can hit you in the face.
All right. We'll say that my -1 was in agility.
Oh boy.
Oh, that's only a 9. A 10 on the
A
die,
9.
-1.
That would not hit. If you or that sorry, that would hit against you. So if you
Yes.
fail, I then hit you. And enemies generally attack once per round unless otherwise noted. You will encounter those enemies that can attack more than once. Um,
Unsurprisingly.
so yeah, pretty basic mechanics, holding your hand through that. But yeah. So that's kind of just your basic violence. It's pretty quick. It's like you can rapid fire through your combat, which is fun.
Love that. Let's say I rolled a 20 or a 1. What would happen on a critical success or a fumble?
Heck yeah. So when you crit on a nat 20, you're going to double your damage or and the armor or protection of whatever you're trying to hit is reduced by 1 tier. Um, so then that means that their DR gets lower and lower as you go.
Hmm.
If I'm speaking correctly on that. Yeah. So there are up to 3rd tier armor, but if you reduce 1 tier, you get a minus D2, minus D4, and then minus D6, depending on how many tiers you've reduced them by, what kind of armor they have or protection in place. If you roll this on a defense, you then get a counterattack. You get a free counterattack.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So that is pretty cool. And then on a fumble, let's say you totally whiffed that.
Oh
The
no.
much like in Tears of the Kingdom, your weapon breaks. or is lost. So there is an option for you to become completely disarmed mid-combat, and then you're gonna have to get real creative real fast.
That seems like a
When it
bad time.
Yeah, you're not gonna want to do that. But that is an opportunity where you could implement something like an omen to do a reroll. So
Hmm.
keep your omens in mind. That is the biggest thing that when I was running this as a GM, remind your players that they have omens.
Yeah, you want to use that omen?
You want
Now's
to
a
you
good
want to use
time,
that omen?
maybe.
Do you want to die or not? And then when it comes to defense, the PC is going to take double damage, and their armor is reduced by 1 tier, just like it was on the reciprocal on that. Um, so when armor is damaged, when armor is damaged, penalties to strength and agility tests are not modified. So you've got that kind of like
Okay.
first tier of defense. Um, Armor reduced below that first tier is ruined and cannot be repaired.
Oof.
So yeah, be wary of what you get entangled with.
Yes. Absolutely. There are, it's a punishing game in some ways, right?
Yes,
Like there are consequences to actions and bad things can happen to you.
yes,
I think that's the number one moral of Mörk Borg is that bad things can happen to you. Bad things will happen to you.
yes, correct. And you can end up with the status broken, and then even worse things can happen to you.
Oh no. Oh
Yes,
no.
yes, indeed.
Oh. Um Excellent. The last thing I have in my notes is about enemy reaction and morale.
Yeah,
Truthfully, I wrote these notes a while ago. I don't remember what that means. So
sure.
Caito, if you would illuminate me.
Sure. So just a reaction. This would be where a DM could choose to roll, or they could have someone else roll for them. So a reaction is 2d6, and on the table, if you roll a 2 or a 3, it's kill. If you roll a 4 or a 6, it's angered. If you roll a 7 to 8, it's indifferent. If you roll a 9 to 10, it's almost friendly. And if you roll an 11 to 12, they're considered helpful.
Ooh,
Um,
I love mechanics like that. I feel like it's so helpful as a DM to like if you're not sure about how an enemy would feel in a situation, be like, I'm just gonna roll and see if they are indifferent or if they're angry or if they're friendly. So love that. That's good.
Or if you could sway them, yeah. Absolutely,
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
also because it doesn't really give any descriptors beyond that one adjective as to how these enemies are reacting, that opens up the world for storytelling, which is very cool because suddenly you roll an 11 or 12 and this enemy then becomes incredibly helpful and leads you through the rest of the dungeon, and maybe you survive. Who knows?
Yeah.
Um,
I'm getting the impression this is a very like storytelling focused type of game.
it sure is. Um, and then, so for morale, most of these enemies are not going to fight to the death, right? You're going to roll for morale. This is where a GM roll would come into place, but you could also, again, you could have one of your players do it too. If their leader is killed, if half the enemy group is eliminated, or if a single enemy has a third of its hit points left, it's going to attempt to turn tail. Um, so this stat is if you roll greater than the creature's morale value with 2d6, it is demoralized. And then you roll a d6 to see if the enemy on a 1 through 3 either flees or a 4 through 6 surrenders.
Great.
So all is not lost.
There are, if luck is on your side, you might live to fight another fight. If the enemy runs away, tail
you
between its legs.
you might indeed.
Excellent. I love that. So combat seems pretty straightforward, pretty simple
Yep.
for Mörk Borg. Let's talk about what you were so excited to get into before the break. Let's talk about powers, which
Yeah.
I believe. So we talked about magic scrolls. And I
Yes.
believe the ability tied to powers is the presence ability. So for
Yes.
my character, I think the only thing left is a -2 for presence, if
Yep.
that's
So
right.
you
So
roll
I
your
don't have a good presence.
just a big bruiser.
Yep.
Um, so you roll your presence the plus d4 every morning to determine how many times you could use a power in a day. It's essentially like restoring a spell slot if we're comparing systems, which we've done a lot. Um, so then you choose from your available scrolls, whether that be unclean or sacred, and that is when you test your presence against the DR of 12. So if you succeed, the power is activated and you subtract, one of your power slots from your daily use. If you fail, the power does not work. You lose two D2 hit points and you become dizzy for the next hour. Um,
Oof.
and during that stretch of time, that hour, powers will always fail in the worst possible way. So there is a risk that inherently comes with using scrolls. Some of the scroll let's just for an example, because these scrolls are so wildly wonderful. Charlotte, let me have you roll a d10. We're going to see what kind of unclean scroll there is available to you that you found in your bag.
Excellent. I've got my D10 in hand. That was a 1.
A 1. Palms open the southern gate. A ball of fire hits D2 creatures, dealing D8 damage per creature.
Whew.
So that's a pretty cool one
That's
that you
pretty
have in your back
cool.
pocket. Yep.
Too
And
bad I have a minus
again,
2.
powers. Right. So then you, as the kind of bruiser of the group, would be taking a pretty high risk in using a power. But if you have someone who has higher presence, then that's kind of how the spellcaster versus like a melee fighter or a more combat based character might be. Let me
Yeah,
have
just
you roll
pass
another
that
d10
scroll
and
along.
yes, yes, it's okay to pass scrolls along. And they aren't like the single use scrolls. Like that's what we mean by you have these scrolls. This is your spell set. And you don't like burn it and then it's suddenly gone unless otherwise indicated. So, let me have you roll another d10 and let's hear what a sacred skull could be like.
All right. That one was a 9.
Unassuming glare. D4 creatures lose D8 HP each. So
That's
there
pretty
are some pretty
good.
beefy scrolls that you can get.
That
Yes.
sounds pretty
So
good, considering I only have 9 hit points.
yes, absolutely. That could debuff someone pretty heartily. So,
Yeah.
that's the kind of cool nature of how scrolls work in this system. Or the spell casting the powers, magical modifier things. So,
I love that. That's super cool. And well, I realize we haven't talked about it, but assuming a D8 of damage from my scroll, reduces an enemy to 0. Um,
sure.
I assume it, unlike some other games where you've got a chance to come back after that. If you go to 0, are you just gone forever?
Um, if you as a PC go to 0, you are considered broken. From
Mm.
there, you have to roll a d4. So, Charlotte, you got hit and you're at 0 hit points. You did
Oh
not go
no,
below 0 hit points, but you're at 0 hit points. Roll me a d4. Let's see what happens.
that is a 4.
A 4. Per the broken chart, you are now dead.
Oh well, there we go. The end,
However,
folks.
however, if however, this is also an opportunity where you could use an omen and re-roll that. Um,
Ah.
wherein you could get the fall unconscious for D4 rounds, could break or sever a limb, lose an eye, you can't react, or you could hemorrhage, which needs to be treated before you have X amount of hours before your character would die in these circumstances. But that being said, there are things like potions of healing. There are various ways that your character could survive something like this. Probably a bit on the worse for wear side. And then, of course, the rest system is also in place there, which would restore it kind of like the short rest versus long rest, kind of catching your breath, having a drink of water. Would restore D4 hit points, whereas a full night's rest restores D6 hit points, which most of the time restoring a D6 of hit points might restore all of your hit points because your hit points are
All
real
right.
low.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, there are ways to bounce back when, basically if you were knocked unconscious, you are not, and all is not entirely lost, but it is not great.
Yes. I do like it's not it's not a completely unforgiving game.
Right.
It is very easy to die, but you have a chance every once in a while to bounce back.
Exactly.
I love that. And there are opportunities for making your character a little stronger at the end of the
Correct.
day, as well. Which I don't. We won't dive too much into that here because we are rough start. We this is all you need to get started and get going. Um, so I think that covers everything we wanted to talk about. Unless you have anything else you want to add, Cato.
No, I hadn't, just that I had mentioned before that the Morkberg website is very, very useful. Please check it out. It's visually very stunning. They have a ton of resources there, including their PDFs, including additional classes, rules explanations, details on Cyborg and Pirate Borg, and all of these things. So it is definitely worth checking that out and hopping into their Discord. They always have cool things. They're also really nice guys. So if they are at a con that you're at, they were very sweet and signed my copy of Death in Space, which I
Aw,
picked up because apparently they really like bleak games.
huh? Who would have thought?
Thought so. Yeah.
Lovely. Yeah, I highly recommend checking out Mörk Borg and all of the available materials online. They do make everything very easily available, which is super duper appreciated. So definitely go check out Mörk Borg if this sounded good to you. I think you'll have a wonderful time. And I super duper want to play now. So,
Yay.
Kato, run a game for me, please.
Gladly.
All right. That brings Rough Start to an end this week. Once again, we are with Rough Magic Games. You can check out our information in the description below. You can find me on Twitter at the Cornbreb, or I more often use Blue Sky these days, which is just at Cornbreb. No the there. I snagged the username. Yeah, where can people find you, Kato?
So I, unfortunately, because of my operator name, there's a lot of us out there, but on Instagram, I am at the Helena Handbasket. On Twitter, TikTok, and Blue Sky, I am only Handbasket. So you can find me on those platforms.
Excellent. Thank you again for joining me to talk about Merkborg. Um, I have to double check what the next episode is so I can plug it. Let me take a look at my calendar here.
Holding,
Um,
holding, holding.
holding. Oh, I'm so excited for the next episode because we will be talking about kids on bikes. And
Yes, we
my
love
guest
Hunter's Entertainment.
Yes. It's a great game, and my guest is going to be the Dungeon Maxter, as we say. Max will be joining me next time. So check that out next episode, and I think that's it. So we'll say goodnight. Thanks
Good
for
night.
watching, y'all. Good night.
Bye.